Originali.
Marco Piovaz, che cura l'appuntamento del venerdì sera di Lingue Originali, quello dedicato alla lingua inglese, è un appassionato dei monologhi di Alan Bennet. Chi ci segue già lo sa. Oggi inizia a proporcene un altro, ancora una volta in 3 puntate. Si intitola Soldering On. È la storia di una signora, da sempre impegnata nel volontariato, la quale, perso il marito, affida l'eredità al figlio. Cosa succederà? Iniziamo a scoprirlo in questa prima puntata dedicata al monologo Soldering On di Alan Bennet. Linea e microfono a Marco Piovaz.
It's a funny time, 3 o'clock. Too late for lunch, but a bit early for tea. Besides, there were 1 or 2 brave souls who'd trekked all the way from Wolverhampton. I couldn't risk giving them tea, or we'd have had a mutiny on our hands. And I think people like to be offered something, even if they don't actually eat it. One's first instinct was to make a beeline for the freezer and rout out the inevitable quiche. But I thought, Muriel, old girl, that's the coward's way out. So the upshot was I stopped up till 2 a.m, trundling out a selection of my old standards. Chicken in a lemon sauce, beef en croûte from the old Colchester days, I thought of Jessie Merchant, and bushels of assorted salads. As it happened, it wasn't exactly a salady day. Quite crisp for April, actually. However, Mabel warmed up the proceedings with one of her famous soups, conjured up out of thin air, so we lived to fight another day. Nobody could quite put their finger on the flavour, so I was able to go around saying, "Have you guessed the soup yet?" And that broke the ice a bit. I don't know what had got into Mabel, but she'd gone mad and added a pinch of curry, and that foxed most people. It was cauliflower, actually. Still, it was a bit sticky at the start, as these occasions generally are. There were people there one didn't know from Adam. All the Massey Ferguson people, for instance. Completely unknown quantities to me. And then lots of people I knew I should know, and I didn't. But whenever I saw anyone looking lost, I thought of Ralph and grabbed hold of someone I did know and breezed up saying, "This is Jocelyn. She's at the Royal College of Art. I don't know your name, but the odds are you're in agricultural machinery," and then left them to it. It was a case of light the blue touch paper and retire. Knowing Ralph, of course, it was a real mixed bag. Several there from the Sports Council and quite a contingent from Tonbridge. Some friends of Norwich Cathedral and the Discharged Prisoners' Aid Society. Madgen Pierce, whom we met on the Mauritania on our honeymoon. Donald and Joyce Bannerman, who were actually en route for Abu Dhabi. Then Donald bought a paper at Heathrow, saw the announcement and came straight down. And one sweet old man who'd come all the way over from Margate. He said, "You won't remember me, Mrs. Carpenter, but I'm a member of the criminal fraternity." I shrieked. As the vicar said, Ralph touched life at many points. The children magnificent, of course, or Giles at any rate. Luckily Margaret didn't appear. But Giles took off all the household brigade people on a tour of the garden, while Pippa coped with some of the bigwigs from the city. "I don't think you know George," I heard one of them say. "George cracks the whip at Goddison Brown." Poor souls, they both of them deserved medals. And Crispin and Lucy, angelic. Crispin popping in and out of people's legs, reaching up to fill the glasses. I wanted them to have a rest. "No," said Giles, "let them do it. They adored their grandpa." "Adored him," said Pippa, "like we all did." The church had been absolutely chocker, and I'd managed not to blub until right at the finish, when they struck up with "I vow to thee my country." And then I'd 101 things to do, so I was perfectly all right, until I saw awful Angela Gillespie had made the mistake of talking to boring old Frank from the firm, and I heard the dreaded words "forklift trucks," and thought how many times I used to have to shut Ralph up in similar circumstances. And the idea of shutting Ralph up at all set me off instantly, and I had to nip into the pantry to staunch the floor, shortly to be followed by Mabel, who'd just fallen over one of his old Wellingtons and promptly gone into floods. So we had a good laugh and a good cry over that before powdering our noses and hurling ourselves back into the fray. When everybody's gone, I'm just having 5 minutes in the chair before tackling the debris when Margaret comes plunging into the room. She said, "What were all these people?" I said, "It was a kind of party for Daddy." She said, "Why? Is he dead?" I said, "You know he's dead." She said, "Who killed him?" I said, "Don't be such a donkey. Come along and we'll find you a tablet." Some of Ralph's medicine's still in the cupboard. Fat lot of good that did, I thought, and poured it down the love. Then I felt a bit choked. Anyway, the tablet did the trick. I heard her walking about at 2 a.m, but I didn't get up. Except then I had to get up anyway, because it suddenly came to me that in all the excitement I'd completely forgotten to feed the dogs. Everybody I run into says not to take any big decisions. I staggered into the community centre bearing Ralph's entire wardrobe, which Angela Gillespie had nipped in smartish and earmarked for muscular dystrophy. 5 minutes later, Brenda Bousfield had come knocking at the door on behalf of cystic fibrosis. Knives out straight away. I practically had to separate them. In fact, I did separate them in the end. The city suits to Angela and Brenda the tweeds. All lovely stuff. Beautiful dinner jacket from Hawes and Curtis, done for Giles if he hadn't got so fat. Mind you, he didn't want the ties either. Angela did. "Lovely jumble," she said. "How are you coping? Don't take any big decisions, one day at a time. I don't see it too." Actually, I'd been silly and kept his shoes back. I loved his shoes. Always used to clean them. My shoe-shine lady. "Whatever you do," Angela said, "don't give them to Brenda. They're top-heavy on stuff, their group. It's well known. It all goes on the admin. We can use shoes." I thought I'd go into the library and see if Miss Dunsmore could find me something on bereavement. That's something I learned from Ralph. Plug into other people's experience. Pool your resources. A new experience is like travelling through unknown country. But remember, others have taken this road before you, old girl, and left notes. So, question number 1, is there a map? Question number 2, am I taking advantage of all the information available? It doesn't matter if you're going to get married, commit burglary, or keep a guinea pig. Efficiency is the proper collation of information. Oh, Ralph. Miss Dunmore did a reconnoitre round, but the only information she could come up with was a book about burial customs in Papua New Guinea. I think even Ralph would draw the line at that. However, she thought the health centre did a pamphlet on bereavement. Miss Dunsmore said she wasn't offering this as consolation, but apparently elephants go into mourning, and so, very strangely, does the pike. So we chatted about that for a bit, told me not to take any big decisions, and if I was throwing away any of his books, could I steer them her way, as she ran some sort of reading service for the disabled. I dropped into the health centre and the receptionist said there was a pamphlet on death. They'd had some on the counter, only the tots kept taking them to scribble on, so they hadn't reordered. She said she'd skimmed through it and the gist of it was not to take any big decision and to throw yourself into something. I said, "You don't mean the canal?" She said, "Come again." Nobody expects you to make jokes. As I was going out, she called me back and said, did Ralph wear spectacles? Because if he did, not to throw away the old pairs, as owing to cutbacks, they'd started a spectacles recycling scheme. Back at base, Mabel said Margaret had been plonked on the chair in the passage all morning, with her bag packed, and her outside caught on, and for some reason Wellington boots. Said the police were coming. We manhandled her upstairs, and after about 17 goes, I managed to smuggle in a tablet, which did the trick, and she'd just settled down for a little Z's when who should draw up at the door but Giles. He'd cancelled all his appointments, eluded the guards at the office, and just belted down the A12 because he suddenly thought I might need cheering up, bless him. He could always get round Mabel ever since he was little, so she agrees to hold the fort while he whisks me off to lunch at somewhere rather swish. I thought to myself, I hope you're watching, Ralph, you old rascal, and eating your words. Ralph and Giles never got on for more than 5 minutes, whereas it's funny, he was always dotty about Mags. When eventually we get back, what with all the wine, I mean pudding and cheese, I'm just longing to put my head down, but Giles cracks the whip and gets me sign lots of papers. It turns out Ralph's left me very nicely off. What with the house and all his various holdings, one way and another, I'm quite a rich lady. He's tied a bit up for Margaret, nothing specific for Giles, but he doesn't mind because of course he doesn't need any, and when I go he'll get it all anyway. But what I do have is what Giles calls a liquidity problem. And the first item on the agenda is to give me some ready cash, hence the papers. Then something about buying a forest. Bit wary to start with, said, can I not mull it? And Giles said, well, you can, but the index is going down. I said, what about Mr. Sherlock? Giles said, you know what lawyers are. Wish old Ralph could have seen me signing away. He never showed me any papers at all, whereas Giles took me through them and explained it all. I suppose it's a different generation. What he did do, which made me feel a tiny bit shifty, was to take away 3 or 4 of the best pictures, the 2 carriage clocks, and a couple of other choice items. Said that when the sharks from the revenue came round to assess the stuff for estate duty, these were just the items that would bump the figure up. I said, what about the inventory? Giles said, I think we'll just drag our brogues on that one. Apparently, everybody does it. He's just going to keep the stuff under the bed at Sloane Street until the heat is off. Then back they come. Margaret's still lying on the bed when I went upstairs. Asleep, she looks quite presentable. Daddy's little girl. Not so little now, those greyed legs. But as Mabel says, it looks as if we are on the hospital trail again. If she goes in, I could perhaps go to Siena. Except I've nobody to go with. One keeps forgetting that.
A Lingue Originali, Marco Piovaz ha letto per voi in lingua inglese. Lo ritroveremo su Caffè Italia la prossima settimana, venerdì, sempre alle ore 22. Ma Lingue Originali è in onda anche il sabato con Nadia Meroni, con la lettura in lingua tedesca, e la domenica con Barbara Marchand, per quella in lingua francese. Vi ringraziamo per l'ascolto e vi diamo appuntamento a Lingue Originali fra 7 giorni, sempre su Caffè Italia, la radio e il podcast dalla Roma italiano, e non solo.
Lingue Originali.